7 is something that you should be really, really proud of, because I remember the first time that I heard a 10, a 10's not real. No one gets a 10. I was like, well, then why does it exist? You mean even if I get everything right, not a 10? They're like, impossible. How could you get everything right? I'm like, I don't know. They don't care that you got a 9 or an 8 versus someone who got a 6.5 because you took 4 hours to do that. They took 2 hours to do it and they got a 6. Who's the fool now?
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Dose of Dutch podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Terry, and for this episode, I'm really leaning into the back-to-school spirit. It's the middle of August, which means we're seeing all of the students move back in, get excited about school, not just in The Hague, but around the Netherlands. And it really made me excited and a bit nostalgic for when that was me 4 years ago. That's a bit wild. I moved here with my best friend, Rilee. We had come from a very small liberal arts school in Kentucky. We had just finished our undergraduate degrees and decided that we would do our master's degrees in Rotterdam. So we arrived here having really no clue what to do, from admin and getting all of your paperwork to actually going to class. Do people wear backpacks? Do they carry a tote? How do we bike? We really had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. And so I thought it would be perfect to bring on my best friend, Rilee Britton, to go through that experience, talk about our best tips, also reflect a bit on our experiences at our very small school in Kentucky, and just compare what it was like to move from that experience into Erasmus University in Rotterdam. We're going to offer practical tips, some funny stories probably, and it's quite interesting even if you aren't a student now, but you're maybe thinking about being a student in the future or just interested in what it's like to be a student in the Netherlands. We'll get to the interview in just a bit, but first, my top 5 tips for acclimating into student life in the Netherlands. 1, find a club or a group that's something you're interested in and can socialize immediately. It doesn't have to be a part of the university. I also think it's pretty good to get out of that bubble. 2, find a local cafe or bar that's your spot. You can start to become a little bit known there, and it just feels nice to have a spot that feels like your own. 3, get a bike and start exploring outside of the city center and outside of your campus. 4, find a cheaper coffee order. I made the mistake of ordering very complicated coffees with lots of syrups, and that gets very expensive very fast. Learn to like a cappuccino. And finally, spend time outside before winter. It's about to get cold and dark, so enjoy the sun while we have it. Go to the park, go to the beach, enjoy the time outside. Okay, and now I have a good friend of mine here. A lot of you have heard this story, but when I first moved to the Netherlands, I decided to do a master's, and I told my friend, like, hey, you should do a master's as well in Rotterdam. And surprise, she did it with me. So I thought, what a better person to bring onto the podcast than Rilee Britton, who moved here from Kentucky with me to the Netherlands. Yeah, welcome to the show, Rilee.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Do you want to do a little background? Maybe since in the light of school and studying, you can talk about what you studied at undergrad, the transition a bit into what you studied at Erasmus, and why you chose to study abroad.
Yeah. So like Hannah said, I moved from Kentucky with her to Rotterdam, but I'm from Colorado originally. So I moved from Colorado to Kentucky for undergrad to study behavioral neuroscience. And we went to a liberal arts school. So whatever you majored in and were studying, you did a lot of that. So I studied behavioral neuroscience for almost 4 years, and that's a lot of biology and chemistry and psychology. And then I also had to take some art history classes and some humanities classes. So that's when I really dove into oil painting and drawing and art history. And I loved it. And I loved neuroscience. It was great. But I had this newfound passion for arts and culture. And you told me that you had gotten into Erasmus and you sent me a few different programs. And I looked at the arts, culture, and society one. And I was like, maybe I'll apply and see what happens. And then I got in and it was kind of a no-brainer. I didn't have any plans I was really passionate about after graduation. So it seemed like the perfect opportunity to move. So I did.
So your tip is, if you don't know what to do, move to the Netherlands.
I was kind of directionless and I didn't feel comfortable with what I wanted to do yet. So I was like, well, I still have more to explore, more to learn about myself before I really pick something that I do for a long time, a job. So my advice is if you don't feel good about the job you have or what you're going into, study, do it again and do it abroad.
Change it.
Yeah, change it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the nice thing about going to the school we went to for undergrad. So for context, we went to Center College, which is a liberal arts school in Danville, Kentucky. We called it the Dirty Dan affectionately. But this was like a very small town USA vibe, I would say. We had one bar.
Our senior year, there were two.
I stand corrected.
Yes.
We did have 3 local Mexican restaurant chains that were constantly fighting, but I mean, this is like what you see in TV shows about like a small university town. Like that was kind of exactly our experience, I would say.
Yeah, like Center College was the epicenter of Danville, Kentucky. And, Danville was a real town where people lived and grew up and had families and jobs and lives. And a lot of the kids who grew up in Danville, like their world also revolved around Center College. So when you move to Danville to go to Center, you are at literally the center of everything around you, and your lens shifts from, I don't know, wherever you were to whatever you're doing at Center. Like that is the world. It was a really small school, but once you're like a month in, that changes because that's where you are. And so a 10-minute walk across campus at first, I was like, oh, 10 minutes is nothing. And then a month in, I'm like, I have to go all the way across campus and walk 10 minutes because 10 minutes is far all of a sudden because that's the world you're living in.
Yeah, it was a real bubble. Like we really we just had what was happening on campus and that was your weekend plans. Like there was no like, oh, there's this big festival or everyone's coming into town for this. It was kind of like, there's a big football game on Saturday night. Like sports were also a really big part of like the culture there because I think 50% of the students played a sport.
Mm-hmm.
So we played soccer together. That's actually how we met. So we got to meet before we started college because we went to work soccer camp. So we were still like not even there yet and we became friends, but we played soccer for most of college, I would say.
Playing a sport in college kind of takes over your whole life. That's your job. Sometimes it feels like it's more important than school, but at Center, school was just as important. So you didn't really have the option to not be a good student because your coach, your teammates were on you for your grades. And we did study sessions together. And then if you weren't at your own practice, at your own game, studying with your teammates, the other thing you were doing was going to your friends' sporting events. So football, field hockey, women's lacrosse. I mean, if you weren't playing a sport or if you weren't an athlete yourself, you were definitely friends with one. And so the entire social circle revolved around sports. I didn't really know how to make friends organically because, I mean, we grew up playing soccer and then you go to college and you play soccer and then you also join a sorority and you have all of these things set up for you in your schedule and you have all of these people that you're going to be around constantly. So odds are you're going to get along with quite a few of them and that's how you become really good friends. But when I had so much time on my hands, all of a sudden I had to decide, what do I go? Like, what do I go to? Who do I meet? How do I strike common ground with someone when I don't know what their hobbies are? Like starting a genuine and organic friendship from nothing, I had never done that before.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about it that way. I was going to say we did start because we joined sorority. We both wore our Tri-Delt shirts. So any Tri-Delts in the Netherlands? Delta, Delta, Delta.
Comment below. We'd love to hang out.
We did join a sorority, which was like kind of one of the first social things I did outside of the sports stuff. So I think that was also a way to make friends that was not revolving around soccer for me. But it was also quite an interesting experience. People are always like, what is it like on TikTok with the like singing and the dancing? And we were in a more low key situation, but it still was kind of, there was dancing and clapping and chanting.
We had songs and dances. I think so you guys are going to tell that I'm very easily influenced by Hannah because Hannah also convinced me to rush. And I wasn't planning on it at first because it was just never something that had really come across my mind as something that I saw myself doing. But then everyone was doing it. And Hannah was like, you're not going to just not rush. Like, you have to rush with us. So I did it. And then this is so interesting how this ties into sports once again. Like, sports are still the epicenter of our entire college experience because Greek life had social trends of sports teams within them. So there were like two different kind of soccer sororities that most players would end up in. And the guys had two different football sororities that they would really end up in. And the swim team had one, and field hockey had one or two. So your sorority friends and your sports friends did have quite a bit of overlap.
That's true.
And so that was always like interesting because then you'd leave practice and you'd be like, okay, bye. I'm going to go to my sorority thing. And then 8 girls go with you to the same thing. And so even though we still had friends outside of soccer, there were so many still from within soccer that I was never like alone, I guess. No. There was always someone that I'd known for like 3 years.
I will say we didn't give the context of our school was only 1,400 people. So probably good context to understand is that's why everyone was in all of these circles because it was such a small environment. Like you could not walk across campus without 10 people knowing like, oh, Hannah's going in that direction. Wonder what she's doing. And like it creates a very nosy environment as well.
Very curious.
Lots of gossip, lots of circles, lots of drama, which I loved. But I think it was very much like a close-knit community where we all, like you said, we knew everyone on campus. We knew a lot. We knew the registrar. We knew the people working in the president's office. Like you just kind of know a lot. So yeah, I think it was definitely a unique environment to be in our undergrad. And also academically, it was very challenging. It was really like your professors knew you. They cared about you. They really wanted you to succeed. But that also meant like you felt that pressure of like, okay, I have to do well. And I mean, to paint the picture of how small our classes were, like I was the African Studies major at Center College. Or a minor, sorry. I was the African Studies minor, which was like an entire minor that anyone could sign up for, but I was the only one. So I had a lot of one-on-one time with my professor and like that was great, actually. I loved it. But it was like a very small, intimate, unique environment that we had.
Yeah. Was it hard to have like those conversations in those classes without people to have, dialogue with? Because something I loved about our classes at Center and something that I maybe wish we would have had more at Erasmus were deeper discussions that everyone participated in because you knew your classmates so well and you were so comfortable with who you were in class with. And so you really got to poke at each other and kind of dig into each other's brains and have these really, really deep and interesting conversations. So we had this thing called Center Term, which was a 4-week period between fall and winter. It was during the winter. It was between fall and spring semesters. And Center Term was like a great time to study abroad or take a really bizarre, like unique class that you would never take. So Hannah and I took a quilting class together, and quilting sounds, easy, fun, whatever. This class pushed me so hard, like mentally, emotionally, academically.
Physically, I was getting stabbed by needles because you had to physically quilt something.
Yeah, we had quilting homework. So this class we just thought it was going to be like a crafting class, and I love to craft. So I thought that was going to be great. And there was crafting, but we also learned like the background and the history of quilting patterns and how it was used as like communication and ways that women were able to express themselves and tell stories and these like underground, I guess, communication channels of quilting throughout history. And we watched this really good show during class. I forget what it was called.
Yeah, but the show was not about quilting, but the professor would like pause it and be like, see the quilt on the bed in the background? This symbolizes unity.
Yes.
We were like, But it was our homework to watch the show. So
I was happy to watch it. Yeah. But then we would have these quilting patterns that we had to create as homework, and we'd come back with them, and Hannah would come back and she's like, I can't quilt anymore. I keep stabbing myself. But it was, something that was so unexpected. Everyone got really, really into this quilting class, and there were guys and there were girls and athletes and non-athletes, and just such a such a wide variety of people that then had such interesting dialogue about the history of quilting. So, like, did you miss that being one of the only people in your
African
classes?
I mean, my classes, sometimes people would take them as electives. So it was fine because they just weren't actually a minor in that subject.
Mhm.
But then there were times when no one would sign up for the class or I would have independent research. But I loved that because my professor he is an expert in certain topics in East Africa. And we would just kind of have discussions and go back and forth. And he really challenged a lot of the things that I thought I knew or I thought I believed. And so it actually really helped me to have that like one-on-one kind of guidance. And I also then had the freedom to design my own research. And I was supposed to go to Namibia and like study abroad, but COVID. But it was on one hand a little sad to miss out on that. But on the other hand, it was really nice to have one-on-one attention, which this kind of transitions well into our experience in the Netherlands, because that was kind of the opposite of one-on-one.
Yes. Yeah. I think research is such a good one to use to compare. At Center, like during undergrad, I did so much research on so many different things. I did chemistry research, I did neuroscience research, and then within the classes I was taking, I had to do research on how like CBD affected rats and all types of things. You're doing research project after research project, and you write about it, you tie a little bow on it, you toss it, and you move on to the next one. And then at Erasmus, I'd never written like a giant thesis before. And here it's so common. You have your bachelor's thesis, you have a pre-master's thesis, I think, and then your master's thesis. And everyone had this cumulative work of a whole year. That was an experience they'd had before. And I was like, oh, I would write a paper for 2 weeks and then move on from it. And so the master's degree experience of picking something so early on and like feeding it and developing it and constantly meeting with your advisor about it and draft after draft after draft. I don't know. I thought the research experience was such a different one. And people were a little less comfortable with research because they'd only done research maybe once or twice was kind of what I heard from my classmates, I guess. But I was like, well, I've done 18 different like research papers. I know how to collect data. I know how to analyze it. I know how to write a hypothesis or a theory. That's easy. What's hard is to take a really long time on it and like really dig at it. Yeah. So the length of time that you would spend on something was a really big difference.
Okay, that's actually a perfect transition into talking about kind of our experience here in the Netherlands. We both moved for a 1-year master's. Yours was also 1 year,
1 year,
which is quite short. I think in the US, there's a lot of like 2 or 3 years master's programs. So 1 year is actually a lot to pack it into. So it was, I thought it would be very demanding, but I actually found there was a lot of room for like kind of other things to do.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things is how campus life is really structured over here. And maybe part of it is a master's versus an undergrad, but I do think a lot of the difference is just European or Dutch schooling system versus in the US. There were not these really popular big social events going on. There isn't a core sports team at Erasmus that people will be like, ooh, yay, Erasmus is playing whoever. Let's go to the game on Friday. Yep. You don't tailgate. You don't have, I think there were some maybe social clubs, kind of like Greek life, but I didn't even hear about how to get into them. And it felt like more of an undergraduate thing.
Yeah, and I don't know if they speak English very much in them. I think they're like pretty Dutch focused, but don't let that hold you back if you're not a Dutch speaker. But I do think that they're more like historically Dutch speaking. So, and also as a master's student, yeah.
Yeah, it's not something that I was really going to get into, I don't think. So in addition to not having these basic social events that everyone was going to that you could just tag along at, everyone had adult lives. Like people had worked for 4 years and gone back to do their master's. I had a woman who had 3 children and decided that, she wanted to go back and study again. I had people who had been in film festivals and decided they wanted to come and study to add to like the quality of their film. So people came from all different like parts of the world and parts of their lives to come together to do this master's program. So I think professors and maybe the program just in general does take that into account of you still have a family, you still have a partner, you have a job, you have a household, you have a life outside of this. So even though it is a full-time 1-year program, it's not going to dominate your life. because I do think just in general, work-life balance, study-life balance here is a lot healthier. It's a little bit more proportioned out, I would say. So that was one of the biggest differences I noticed, was not being as busy because there weren't all of these things I felt obligated to go to, but it just fit into life more than you fitting it into your life and squeezing things in.
No, it's true. I also think that the like full-time scares people off of working or interning next to it. But I almost think that that's like something you definitely, if you get into a month or two into it, you can do, because you might notice like, okay, I have classes on these 3 days, but then the rest of the week I am really open and there's not those social obligations. You're not I wasn't involved in any like volunteering or Dutch classes or anything while I was at the university, which I wouldn't suggest. I think it's a great thing to do, but I was like okay, this is going to be a very intense 1-year program. I can't do anything else. And then I got into it and I was like, oh, I have some room to like do an internship that I picked up or try to pick up a job. So I think it's definitely a different structure. And how did you find the classes? I don't know your program. So for context, at Erasmus, it's a very big school.
Huge school.
It's really big. And Rotterdam is obviously the second biggest city in the Netherlands, but you're within a program. So sometimes you might have classes, or I at least had classes just with my program, and those were a bit smaller. But then other times I was in a lecture hall of like 200 people. So I don't know how you experienced that with your classes.
Yeah, when we had just arts, culture, and society classes of our core group, 35 to 40 people, depending if everyone was there or not. But then we had these larger heritage culture classes that overlapped with the tourism groups. And those could get to like 60 or 70 people. And that's not a class you're having a discussion in, because there's 65 people next to you. And the professor might pose a question and you're like, nope, I'm going to keep my hand down and I'm not going to answer that because I don't know any of these people. And I think because of those class sizes, that also changed the way that professors lectured. Like it was a true lecture. And that was something I maybe wasn't as used to, is sitting really high up in this hall and, okay, he's going to keep on going with the slides, or she's not going to go back if you missed something. And they also aren't really going to notice if you're there or not there. If you send them an email, hey, I'm sick. Okay. If you don't send them an email, they probably won't realize you aren't there. They only sometimes took attendance. I didn't have a personal relationship with most of my professors.
Yeah, I agree. I also didn't have that much. And I think the grading was also very different for the grading system, which we can get into, but also the final project. So I had a million group papers, not a million. I had a year on programming, but I had almost for every class. I rarely wrote a paper on my own. Did you have group papers?
You had more group papers than I did. Yeah. And I thought that was crazy. I remember hearing about your first group paper experience and I was like, oh, I can't imagine. Bam, group paper assigned. And that was so different than just a group project. I mean, you're all writing a paper together and you have one paper with all your names on it. And that was hard. And so it taught me better communication skills and patience, and also how to advocate for what I thought was actually right versus just, sitting down. And also taught me to listen and maybe learn from my peers a little bit more. And I do think that was one of the benefits, one of the big differences that really highlighted, I don't know, something I was lacking before, was I was so self-sufficient at Center College, and then at Erasmus, I had to be self-sufficient in a different way, and I had to rely on other people a different way. So everything flip-flopped for me all of a sudden. Yep. So I had to figure out how to study and be motivated and learn without having a personal relationship with my professors. And then I had to figure out how to listen to my classmates and collaborate on a paper and then feel good about something that 3 other brains and myself put together while still maintaining, respect and friendships.
Yeah, I mean, we came from a very small environment, so it was very much like kind of a shock for us, I think. In the group work I was used to doing, but group papers I wasn't. And then I thought like, oh, this is so annoying. It's one of those things. And then now my 2 jobs post-grad, I write a lot of group papers. I have never written a paper for work that's just Hannah Terry, which is something that like I'm again like, yep, the professors were right. Like I thought this was just a way to like, be able to grade papers faster and stuff. And now I'm writing group papers not group papers or like collaborative papers, editing things constantly through my work. And I'm like, that was really relevant to my real world job. Like,
yeah, I'm constantly co-editing documents at work and slides. And I mean, the amount of collaboration that I learned at Erasmus really prepared me for the real world and for a real job. And I think maybe that's why I felt a little hesitant leaving center college to go do a job, as I didn't feel ready to do something that wasn't academic. And so it was a really nice transition out of such a hardcore academic world into what felt like a more realistic version of what skills do you need to be a competitive candidate for a job and to be successful when you're hired. And, we did come from such a small environment, but I never went to a large state school. I had friends who went to really big state schools. I mean, I've heard that people have had lecture halls of hundreds of people. So if you're coming from a really big state school like CU Boulder or Ohio State or UK, this could be a completely normal experience for you to sit down in a lecture hall of 70 or 80 and have to do that. So I am interested to hear, I don't know, if anyone else from a state school had the same experience of wow, culture shock, or if they're like, yeah, that's a big school. That's a big school for you. You don't know everyone. You sit in a big lecture hall. You figure it out yourself. Like you're an adult.
That's normal.
Yeah.
You guys were just spoiled.
For sure. We had our hands held through a lot of things.
Yes, definitely. I had professors at center that would call and be like, hey, are you showing up to your final? Not me. I would never do that. But other students, that they would like get called, and it's like, okay, your boss is not going to call you and wake you up in the morning for your like final exam. Like that's just a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the grading system in the Netherlands because this was really hard for me to grasp. Do you want to explain it?
Yes. So in the United States, your grading system is from an A to an F level, an A plus being 100%, knock the lights out, you're amazing, nothing was wrong, all the way correct, to an F, you fail, 20%, 30%, you need to do better. To me, that translates to the Dutch grading system, at least I thought, of a 1 to 10 scale. A 10, that's perfect. A 1, that's not perfect. In the Dutch grading system, is it a 5.5 or a 6 that's passing?
A 5.5 is passing.
A 5.5 is passing. So that's, to me, a 55%. And I'm like, ooh, a 55%, that's an F still. And I remember one of my first grades that I got back on a paper or something, I think I got like a 7.5. And I was like, oh my gosh, a C. I got a 75. This is so embarrassing. I thought I was so good at this class. And other people were like, a 7.5. My mom's going to be so proud.
No, yeah, I had the exact same reaction. Like, I got a 7. I'm horrible. It feels like it's just, but I think the difference is actually that it's graded on a curve and not a line. And I'm not a math person. So sorry to my mother, who is a math teacher. But being graded on a curve means that it's really hard to jump from a 7 to an 8 or an 8 to a 9. But it's pretty easy to jump from a 5 to a 6.
Yeah.
No, but the important thing to know is that you can look up a scale that's like translates what is my Dutch score compared to my American grade. And that really helped me realize like, oh, a 7 is actually a B+.
Yeah, a 7 is something that you should be really, really proud of, because I remember the first time that I heard a 10, a 10's not real. No one gets a 10. I was like, well, then why does it exist if I can't get it?
And challenge accepted.
Yeah.
I will be getting a 10 on one assignment in this year.
Give me a chance. Yeah. And I was like, you mean even if I get everything right, not a 10? They're like, impossible. How could you get everything right? I'm like, I don't know. What if I do? No, because why would you do that if you don't have to? They don't care that you got a 9 or an 8 versus someone who got a 6.5 because you took 4 hours to do that. They took 2 hours to do it and they got a 6. Who's the fool now? Like they wasted time. That's how I feel like they see it, is why would you try and get a 7.5 when it doesn't matter? You have only so much time in a day. I'm going to do things with that time. I get a 6. I understand the content. I pass. I'm going to go see my friends. I'm going to see my family. I'm going to travel. And that was a big mindset shift for me of that work-life balance that I feel like we keep coming back to. That is just, I think, done so much better here.
Yeah.
where you kind of maintain sanity a little bit better, but that was such a hard mindset shift for me.
No, it was. I think I finally figured it out for my thesis because I took an internship while I was writing my thesis, if you remember, and I kind of had to say either I can work really hard on my thesis and try to get an 8.5, I don't know, or I can take an internship, probably do worse on my thesis, but I've made connections, I've networked, and I've gotten skills for the real world. And so in the end, I decided like, I'm going to do the internship. I'm going to write my thesis and I'm going to try really hard, but I'm going to be happy with a 7 or a 7.5 because I can do both of these things at once rather than, and at the end of the day, no one has ever asked me for my grade on my thesis.
No one's ever asked me for a single grade I got at Erasmus in general.
Actually, no one's even asked me for proof that I went to Erasmus.
Okay, same. When I started working, no one asked me. They're like, did you go to college? I was like, twice. And they're like, okay. And I was like, you don't want to see? You don't want my proof? Do you want my transcripts, my diplomas? Do you want to hear about it? And they're like, no.
But what they do care about is that you did an internship and you had real world experience and you networked yourself into being able to get a job. So it is something that it was hard though in our American minds to like be like your GPA doesn't matter that much.
Yes.
Take the 5.5 and move on.
Yeah. Take the 5.5, take the 6, get an internship, get drinks after work with your colleagues and get to know them. That's still something I need to do a little bit better with, is putting myself out there a little bit more. I think that's something that I should have done a lot sooner, and I wish I would have done at Erasmus, but having that big, like, I don't know, lack of social obligation, it was really hard for me to fill that with something on my own. And I'm trying still to, I don't know, go out of my way to make friends. And you do such a good job with all of the events you put together in The Hague. And it's something that I wish, I don't know, I'd had last year, or we had when we first moved here, was a group of girls or a club. I just wanted a club to join, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I also think I limited myself when we moved that like I had to join a club that the school organized.
Yes.
Without really like picking my head up out of the university bubble and realizing like, oh, I can be friends with people who aren't students.
Yeah.
Also because with a master's, you're like 22, 23, at least we were. And like, you don't need to join like a school activity. You can join a book club, you can join a run club, but I didn't join anything that was not like school related. And I think one thing that is not actually joining something, if you need a first step, is like finding a place that's your spot. So if it's a cafe, if it's a bar, being able to like walk in and like the person who works behind the counter is like, hey, Hannah, like it kind of makes you feel like, someone knows me here. And it's a really nice way to like feel like it's kind of like, yes, this is my spot. I feel at home here. I think it's a nice like simple step you can take when you move to the city that you're going to be studying and just kind of latch on to one place and be like, okay, this is my bar. I'm going to get a beer here on a random Tuesday. And like, this is the place that's like my go-to. I think it's such a nice feeling to have like, this is my spot.
Yeah, I think creating your own community is something that was so foreign to me because I always had these communities that I was plopped into and I was automatically a part of, and something that I wish I would have done sooner. But once I started to do it for myself, I just noticed this kind of liberating, free feeling of this is my life and I built this for myself, is once I started joining a run club or running on my own and then seeing the same people at the same time every time I run. And even if it's the same girl I recognize, I'm like, hey. And then, like I make a little friend and I'm like, oh, what are you on your long run today? What are you training for? And it's not hard to establish yourself in a spot and then create your own community, but it seems like it would be harder than it is.
Yeah, I agree. It's something that's like a simple, also, it doesn't have to be scary. It's just about like going to the same place a bit and being a little bit repetitive, but in a good way that makes it feel like it's part of your routine or natural.
Yeah. I know when we first moved together on Saturday nights, we had our bar we would go to. We had our clubs, the Wit Op.
That's true. We did. We were a regular at the Wit Op.
Love the Wit Op.
It's a dancing bar in Rotterdam. I think it was more close to home for us because it was not a big club with like lights or like a scary bunker with techno music. It was a little bit like just a bar where like you could stand outside, or they had music and DJs where you could dance.
Yeah, I think we latched onto it because it started a little bit earlier than all the other places started. The late night culture here is so different from the late night culture in the US.
I mean, you can start drink at age 18. 18-year-olds have a hell of a lot more energy than I do in my body. So the 18-year-olds are like, yeah, we start drinking at like midnight, 1, which is a bit too late for me.
I would like to be in bed by 1.
Yeah.
I've gotten better about it, but I remember when it was my first birthday here, we invited some of like classmates over to our apartment. We were gonna, pre-game, pre-drink, and then go out to bars. And we started drinking at 8 o'clock, maybe. We had dinner, we had people over, we started drinking at 8, and people were like, how long are we gonna drink here for? Because the place you want to go doesn't open until 1. And I was like, I was hoping we leave here at 9. And they're like, oh, to another bar? Like to get drinks somewhere else? I was like, no. It was so hard for me to make that time frame shift of I cannot start drinking at dinner and then go out, or else I won't make it. I will fall asleep. I won't make it to midnight. And that's when they start, is midnight.
And you don't want to be the first one to the club, which we kind of have been.
We were the first one to many clubs.
Yeah. And do you remember our first ADE party? So
yes.
ADE is Amsterdam Dance Event. And actually it's quite well timed with the start of the school year because it's in October.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of like, you've hit your routine, you're kind of maybe making friends, and then you can go to this. It's a festival across Amsterdam, and there's different kind of pop-up places that you can go to. So you don't have to buy a ticket to the whole festival. You can just say, I like this DJ, so I'm going to this party, or I like this vibe, so I'm going here. You can pick and choose cheaper tickets. But the first party we went to was from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
7 a.m.
It was in Amsterdam Nord, which is like notorious for like just a little bit more intense music and techno, I would say.
Yeah, the people there, they like techno. And it was my first techno experience, but I was so excited because I was like, oh, finally an organized party that I know I'm going to. At Center College, every party was organized. Sometimes we were the organizers. Like you could find a party anytime you wanted to and have such a great time. And then, your boyfriend got us tickets and I was like, oh yes, we're going to a party with a group of people and we all know why we're going. That's going to be great. It was so overwhelming.
It was kind of terrifying.
It was so scary for me the first time.
So we show up to the group and they're like, so who's your favorite DJ? And then we go, the Chainsmokers.
DJ Khaled.
And they looked at us and they were like, huh? And then they said, like, did you bring earplugs? And we were like, earplugs for what? And they were like, okay, you need to buy earplugs at the door, first of all. And it was quite an experience, I'll say.
Yeah. And then I remember everyone had these like keychain bottle caps.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, what's that? And they're like, oh, well, because they take your cap on your bottle of water. And I was like, I'm going to spill my water? Why don't I get a cap? And I think I don't know if it's to create like less litter, less plastic, whatever. But I mean, these people had been to festivals. They knew their techno. One of them was a DJ even. I mean, they were techno veterans and we were not.
No, we were dressed in our little cute, like, American outfits.
We had our pigtails.
Yeah, we stuck out like sore thumbs, but it was a funny experience. Mm-hmm. Maybe one day I'll make it back to ADE, but I don't know.
Maybe back to ADE. But since then, I've gone to a couple more festivals, and I have grown to appreciate certain levels and types of techno. And I think that, the party culture is so different. And I mean, if you're a big party person, a small party person, I think you can still find the type of going out events and parties. And even if you don't drink, you can still find like nightlife here that fits you. Maybe even a little bit better than someone can like at your small college, because there was one vibe at Center College.
Yeah.
And here, there's still one vibe, and that's a late night vibe, but there's so many different things you can do.
Yeah, there's a lot of options, and I will say people tend to follow the like DJs that they like.
Yeah.
More than they are like, this is my club and I always go here. Like I hear of a lot of people who are like, oh, there's a DJ I really like at this place. Do you want to go here? Or there's a DJ playing at this festival. Do you want to go? Mm-hmm. Which I like because it's kind of mixing it up. Every weekend is not the same. Not that I'm going out every weekend. Let's be very honest here. But especially when we were students, we were always going to the same club every weekend. And it was just a different vibe every time. Like one night it's Fiesta Marcumba, which is a Spanish Latin night. The next night it's like Taylor Swift, Harry Styles night.
That was great.
It was amazing. The next night it's like techno and like I think we just liked the consistency of the club we went to, but it was kind of confusing because it was like, we're coming here every weekend, but every weekend is not the same.
It was hard to figure out. We were like, well, we want this vibe. And we couldn't ever get the same experience twice.
No.
And then we'd have friends come visit and we're like, this will probably be fun, but we actually don't know because we have no idea what it's going to be like tonight. And they're like, well, don't you go all the time? Yes, there are no promises.
Yeah.
And it was just hit or miss sometimes. But following a band, a DJ, a group, then you know the vibe you're getting, which I do like.
Yeah, or like a theme night. I love a theme night.
I love a theme night.
I really want to do a Taylor Swift Harry Styles party.
Oh, you should.
I know, but the logistics of organizing a party really overwhelm me.
You're too old.
But it sounds very fun. Yeah. And so to wrap up each episode, I like to ask our guest for a tip for the listeners. And I can start. So my tip for people who are studying in the Netherlands is to always ask about a student discount. My partner is actually getting his master's right now. So I'm like, yay, we have a student discount. You can get this at like hair salons, shopping places, restaurants. So, I mean, it never hurts to ask. Just ask if they have a student discount and carry your student ID with you. It's also a good thing for the train system that's run by NS. And if you get an NS card or you have an NS subscription online, you can get discounts on your train travel, which is a really big, it will help you save money. It really can keep your costs down as a student. So that's my tip.
Ooh, good tip. I definitely did not take enough advantage of student discounts.
I didn't know about them.
Yeah. Take it. Take his student card. Get all the discounts you can. I think if you are moving from the US, if you're moving abroad to study, the first thing you need to do is get a Dutch phone number. Once you have a Dutch phone number, then you can open a bank account, then you can do so many things, but you can't sign up for so many essential life things until you have a Dutch phone number. And sometimes they're like, well, you need a bank account before you can get a phone number. No, go to a tourist shop, get one of those 30-day SIM cards that comes with the Dutch phone number, put it in your phone. It opens so many doors. As soon as you have a Dutch phone number. My other tip would be download Tiki as soon as you can. I did not have Tiki for 6 months. And friends, Tiki.
What is Tiki?
Tiki is
Start.
Okay.
No, Tiki. Yeah.
Okay. My other recommendation is download Tiki as soon as you land. Tiki is basically Dutch Venmo. It is a money transfer app. So your friend pays for you. They send you a Tiki. You send them the money for the drink that they bought you. I did not have Tiki for the first 6 months. And I don't know why I didn't just download it, but I would go out with people. I played soccer for a little bit. They needed money for something. I would just have to carry around cash. And I was like, oh, I don't have Tiki. Can I pay you in cash? And they're like, who are you? Download Tiki. It makes your life so much easier. It's just like Venmo. I mean, I think the amount of Tikis we've probably sent back and forth, we honestly probably don't even Tiki anymore because it's just the same 20 euros cycling back and forth. But get Tiki because then you can do things with your friends and not feel weird about splitting payments.
Or carry around a lot of cash.
Or carry around a lot of cash because that was weird for me to do.
Good tip. Yeah, thanks, Rilee, for joining. So nice to have you on the podcast and have an official conversation.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. So much fun. My first podcast.
First podcast. And if you're a student who's thinking about coming to the Netherlands, or maybe you're landing this week in the Netherlands for school, we are going to drop resources in the show notes. I'm also going to come out with a student guide. I put one out last year, and this year I will make it even better. So you can have a bit more of a grasp on these things like Tiki, like the student discounts, and hit the ground running and have a great school year. And that wraps up our episode. Big thank you to Rilee for coming on the show, for Studio Point of View, the Hague's premier content studio, for hosting us. We are also styled by Hoff Furniture. And don't forget to comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next week.